Pine Tree Pulse. Brought to you by the Maine Policy Institute.
All right, so we're very pleased to welcome onto the Pine Tree Pulse this week Garrett Mason, Republican candidate for governor of Maine, running this year. And Garrett, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I know that we've had several conversations with some of the folks that you are running against in that primary. But getting a good sense of who you are and what you'd like to do as governor is kind of what we're all about today. So welcome to the Pine Tree Pulse. It's good to have you here. So I'm not sure if you remember this, Garrett, but obviously we have talked before in the past, a few times, obviously. But just like this, we had a candidate interview at Maine Policy Institute back in 2018 because you have run for governor before. And we're going to get to that story and sort of how you arrived there. But it gives us a neat opportunity to remind the audience that you're a somewhat known commodity. You know, during the LePage years, you served as majority leader in the Maine State Senate. And I think a lot of people are very familiar with your work, and that has dovetailed nicely into you running for governor. So I think I'd actually like to begin there if I could. Your story kind of begins back in time here a little bit. It's sort of around 2010. Obviously, there's stuff preceding that. But you went from, I think, a very different concept and idea of what your life and career would be to entering politics, running for the state Senate, winning, becoming majority leader, and then ultimately running for governor in 2018 and now again. So I kind of want you to take me back to the beginning of that story here, particularly how you ultimately got involved in any of this. I don't know how they dragged you into it, but what ultimately was the thing that that brought you into this universe?
Yeah, so I think there's decision points in people's lives that you can take one way and your life will go very different compared to another way. It'll take you a very different path. And mine, for me, was when I first entered the workforce. I remember when I was in college, I figured out through a sports management class in college. I was in management marketing in college. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Horrible athlete, but loved sports. And in this class, which was just a brief summary of sports management, I realized that you didn't have to be an athlete to be involved in professional sports. There was a whole industry behind it. Somebody had to sell the tickets, put on the production, all of those things. And when that switch clicked for me, that was it. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in sports. And so
was it just the like management of venues and teams, or was it like, being an agent and all aspects of sort of the sports universe?
I love an event. My mom was a caterer. She managed a lot of events growing up when I was a kid. I like to be around people and I like energy. And so that is what kind of drew me to it. So much of what I love about sports is the romance of the sports story itself, the story of a franchise. But game day is fun, and getting ready for game day is a lot of fun. And so for me, it was about that energy. I really love being.
It's hard to find that anywhere else.
It is. It is. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, the first time I walked into Fenway Park, and I have chills on my arms right now. The second you walk into Fenway Park, you're part of a century-old story, and it's the romance of that I really love. And I found that in baseball, and I found it later in life in hockey. But when I figured that out, when I figured out there was this whole industry behind it, that's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. And so worked really hard. The Portland Sea Dogs, which I don't think people understand what a gift the Portland Sea Dogs are to the state of Maine. What we have there is unlike anything else. But went to go work there, had a lot of lead up to that. Worked in vending and concessions. I sold Sea Dog biscuits in the stands, all in efforts to get this internship that would lead to bigger and better things, hopefully one day in Boston, right? But worked there, figured out probably that wasn't the path I wanted to go, and ended up at the Lewiston MAINEiacs at the Coliseum in Lewiston. And, they needed somebody to do their PR. And so I took the job, and it was, 2006, 2007. And I got my first job in sports for like $30,000 a year. And it was just it. Got to do what I wanted to do. Traveled all over North America with the team. That was a lot of fun. And then through a weird twist of events, I ended up becoming de facto president of the club. And I was 24 years old.
As one does.
As one does, And the thing about this league that we were in, a lot of professional, hockey players who have gone, like, left the sport or even still in the sport playing own parts of these Canadian Hockey League teams. Oh, yeah. So one of the teams we're really good friends with was the Quebec Rempart, which play in Quebec City. They used to play at the Colisée Pepsi, which is where the Nordiques used to play. Mm-hmm. And Patrick Roy was the owner-coach of that team. And I got to know him and his kids really well. And so...
That's super cool.
Yeah. And so there was, Sidney Crosby played in the Canadian Hockey League. And he played for the Rimouski Oceanic in Quebec. And he played in Lewiston eight times, I think. And little trivia fact for, people out there.
Yeah. Sidney
Crosby never scored in Lewiston. It's the only place that he never scored. It was in Lewiston.
No kidding.
Yep. And so, we had so many people. Jonathan Bernier was the goalie for the Lewiston MAINEiacs, and he won a Stanley Cup with the LA Kings. What we had in Lewiston with the MAINEiacs was just top level hockey. But, here I am, 24 years old, like walking around hockey giants, right? And I had my first brush with how the government can come in and really upend what you're trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
We got a notice that we needed to start collecting sales tax on our hockey tickets, and the legislature had passed a bill, LD 1495. I will never forget that bill, because they passed it and it was this weird list of 102 service and labor item taxes. It was like clowns at your kid's birthday party and haircuts, and
it was everything.
It was a very weird list of things, and it was to offset the sales tax. That was the ultimate goal. But one of those things was sporting events. And if you know anything about hockey, it straddles 2 calendar years. So if you're selling a season ticket package and this goes into place, well, you're straddling 2 years. Mm-hmm. You're straddling, a taxed year and a non-taxed year. And I realized this, was like, hey, this is a really big problem. And spoke to some people about it. And I was essentially told, well, don't you think you could just send your season ticket holders a bill for half of the year sales tax? And that was the moment where I was like, this is not.
And this would be after that you already sold them, though, right?
No, we were still there.
So it'd be pre?
Oh yeah, the tickets, yes.
Yeah, because I'm trying to figure out exactly, like.
We sell season tickets in August. And so when that would have gone into effect was like October.
Yeah.
And so
they would owe tax on something they've already bought.
Yeah, they would owe tax for January through May tickets. And
so you had to make the decision ultimately, do we eat it or do we bill them for it? And that's kind of a humiliating thing.
Well, it was always eating it. I mean, we're never going to go out to our customers and say, hey, by the way, here's 5% tax on your tickets. You're not going to do that. That's customer service, which is something we can get into later about the government.
I would, just to make the point about the government being terrible. But
or you could, hey, listen, I was 24, right? I would have done a lot of things different, but send a little note saying your state senator did this, But that was what led me to be like, okay, who voted for this? And my state senator did. And so I was like, I'm going to run. I'm doing it. And so I did. And ended up taking out an 18-year incumbent by 11% of the vote.
I think it's very worth noting that was not an expected outcome. I remember that year. I remember that year very clearly. Yeah. And there was a lot of people that won that you didn't really think was going to win, but that particular one was one of the 2 or 3 that people were like, "Wait, what just happened?"
Yeah, yeah.
Who beat who? What? That really?
Yeah. Who's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And being leader in the Senate after the fact, you have like these 3 categories of candidates, right? You have the ones you have to keep. Right? And that's where you're going to spend most of your money. The ones you'd like to have are the second tier. And then you have the participation trophy tier where you can say you ran for the state Senate.
Yeah.
And that was me. That was me. I was down there. And I knew it was only me. I didn't really know much about the system at the time. I'm not going to say I was completely politically naive. My cousin, Dale Crafts, he was in the legislature at that time. My mother was very politically involved before that. And so, I mean, I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew nobody was coming to save me. So I had to save myself. And
But that was just a good old-fashioned hard work story, right? I mean, you knocked on
10,000 doors.
a lot of doors.
I still have the call sheets.
Yeah.
I still have them.
I really wish people understood that better, because you can win in almost any district, no matter who is running and what the partisanship is, if you do the work of meeting people. And
people will vote for you if you knock on their door.
Yeah.
I still have people today, this very day, that I talk to, and they're like, you knocked on my door in 2010, and I'm a Democrat, and I voted for you. I've always voted for you. And it's because you took the time to just knock on someone's door and say, hey, I'm your neighbor. I'd like your vote.
Yeah. You become a lot more human when you do that.
You do. And you know, I think nowadays on your phone, you see a politician in your face all the time. And if you really meet that person, you'll find out most of the time they're not a lot different than you. And you can win these things on hard work. And most districts in Maine, I'd say 90% of districts in Maine, you can win on hard work and just going and knocking on the doors. But that's what we did. You know, we just did it. I remember one time we were at a caucus thing, and in that summer of 2010, and I had just won a primary. I didn't really know I'd have a primary at that time, you know, for that race. And I'd won Lisbon with 93% of the vote. Wow. So it was like 850 something votes to 51 in that primary. And they were curious how I did that. And I said, well, I bought an iPad and I walked around and just got people to sign up for absentee ballots on my iPad. And I got like 400 of them. And they were like, that's a waste of money. Why did you do that? And blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, it got me here. So, you know, but yeah, I mean,
that is a lesson of politics in and of itself, right? There's a lot of bad advice you get from people who've done it this way for the last 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of that in politics, unfortunately. But you know, on election night, we were one of the first races called, and it was really cool. I had no idea. I was in a flux point in my life. The MAINEiacs had actually been sold and sent off to Quebec. And so I was like, well, I guess this is what I'm doing, right?
This is my job now.
This is what I'm doing. And so I was untethered. I wasn't married, didn't have any kids. I was just on my own. And so I was able to kind of dive in and do this work. And I remember the next day, and this is just a funny story, but I remember the next day, and I was with Dale, and I was with one of my other cousins, and we were picking up signs, right? As one does. And they said, we're going to have a press conference in the Hall of Flags at the State House. And the last time I'd been at the State House was when I was in like 11th grade on a school field trip. And so I was like, all right, let's go. And so we went up, and there was a whole bunch of us. And you'll probably remember this press conference. It was Josh Tardy, Christy Lee McNally, all these people that worked on that campaign. And we kind of walked in the place, and we're like, oh my word, we're all screaming. I was hugging people I'd never seen in my life. Yeah. You know, we're all very excited. And I looked around, and I was watching people walk up and down the stairs like on the side of the Hall of Flags and up the center stage and all that. And they were crying. And I leaned down to Dale, and I said, Dale, these people are so happy that we're here. And he started laughing. And there's actually a news clip where they're listening to Josh Tardy speak. And you hear Dale bursting out laughing. He's laughing at me. Mm-hmm. And he's like, these people aren't happy we're here. They're all Democrats, and they're going to lose their jobs. Yeah. And it was a moment of levity and a really long campaign. But that is what the next governor is up against.
Yeah. So we'll get to sort of your decision to run and whatnot. But I think especially given your background and your sort of experience, it's worth maybe kind of hovering over this 8-year period that LePage was in office while you were there and in the state Senate and the majority leader. Because there's so many lessons to be learned, I think, out of them that I'm sure that you pull with you. Tell me a little bit about what you did see and learn about governing, about what not to do, what to do, how to do it. I mean, the state Senate in that period, in 8 of LePage's years, 6 of them, the Republicans held control. Yeah. So you did something right, clearly. Yeah. And a lot of actually, good things were passed through legislatively. I know there's always a little bit of fun in the House and whatnot, but there's a lot of things that I think, if you're in the halls of Augusta doing what you did at the time, you probably pull out of this. So look at the LePage years and your time there. What were those big lessons?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we first got into office, we had a trifecta. It was a Republican trifecta.
Right. You had
we had it all
of the levers of government.
But what we didn't have was we didn't have experience. And God love Paul LePage. But Paul LePage, I think he was just as surprised as a lot of people that he won that night. And as was his team, together with people like Kevin Ray, Bob Nutting, who ended up being presiding officers. No Republican had touched the levers of power in 40 years. I remember they dragged in the last Republican speaker from Old Orchard Beach, and he was well into his 80s. And there was just no experience. There was no knowledge of how things had to happen. Not because we're entrenched in the old ways and we have to make them work. It was we didn't know where the bathrooms were.
Yeah.
And so I think the first thing we learned is that the legislature moves fast. You have to be ready to go the second you walk in there. There's a lot of missed opportunities because we were trying to figure our way through the system. And there were no Democrats who were there that were willing to help us try to figure that out. That's for sure.
How much of it was related to being in the minority for so long that you had to learn how to be the majority? Like beyond just finding the bathrooms.
Yeah.
My memory of that time is that there was difficulty in getting everybody on a common agenda. I mean, you had what the governor's office wanted to do. You had what Kevin Ray wanted to do. You had Bob Nutting. You had individual members of each of those bodies wanting to do things.
Sure.
Commissioners are new to their jobs, and they all have different priorities, and some of them kind of conflicted.
Yeah.
That struck me as part of the issue.
Yeah, there was that's partly true. There was a lot of division in the ranks, and I think that we were able to come through by the time that first budget went through, because one of the things we did is we started lowering the income tax. That's a benefit that people are experiencing even today. That income tax rate has essentially stayed the same from those 8 years of the LePage administration. We did come around together on some common themes. But there was things that, you had Republican legislators who had been in there for 16, 20 years who had this policy item that they were working on. It was the most important thing in the world to them. And now that they had the majority, they were going to get it through. And then they realized, well, it might not be the priority of the governor's office, or it might not be the priority of the Senate president, that, they were fighting as hard as they could to get it done. But that unity did end up coming through towards the end of that first term, for sure. But, we learned about the legislature. We learned about how things had to work. I mean, the Senate, the secretary of the Senate, been there, or the House, I'm sorry, the clerk of the House had been there for 30 years. The one who controls the chamber on where all the dead bodies are in the building, right? That person had been there for 30 years, and you're putting somebody who'd never had the job because it's a partisan position into that place. You have to learn how to do all that. You have to learn how to run the calendar. You have to learn how the bills have to go in the legal way, not just the way that you want them to go. And so we had to learn a lot of those lessons.
And you had to contend with, I think, a Democratic Party that had been in the majority for so long that they did know how to do all that stuff.
And they were outsmarting us.
Yeah, they were happy to throw, gum in the works a little bit.
Yeah, they were, there would be things that would happen and you'd get God rest his soul, but a guy like Bill Diamond would give you a wink and you knew you had one coming straight to the head, or like some of these other people who are long gone are just, they knew what they were doing, and they knew if you knew the rules,
right,
you could defeat a majority. And that's the biggest lesson that I learned, is if you know the rules, you can win. You might not have the votes, but you can win if you know the rules. And through that, we lost the majority for a couple of years for one term. And then we came back. I was determined to win it back. We were not going to be one-hit wonders. And so I kind of took the charge to win the majority back in the 127th. And we did. Got back up to 20 seats.
That's 2014 when he won re-election.
Yep, 2014. Yep. And House couldn't quite get there. They got close, but they couldn't get there. And then, the big test was going to be 16. And could we keep it? Republicans hadn't kept it in almost a half a century. And we did. We went out, worked hard, lost a couple of seats, but maintained 18. And so what I took out of that is you have to know where to go when you get there. You can't just think, oh, I'm going to get there. I'm going to change all these things. There's a lot to go between here and there. And I think that's one of the things that I bring to the table as governor is like, I got to serve in a majority.
Yeah.
I got to serve at a time where you could get things done. And, you need to know what the other side's thinking. Even if you don't have a majority in the legislature, you need to know how they think and what they think. And I have a very unique set of experiences, and that lend to this specific moment in this race that I think I can bring to the table. And Republicans are going to need somebody who can see from 30,000 feet, but also can get down in the mud and do what they need to do. And I believe I'm that guy.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that a little bit too, because maybe I'm jumping ahead a bit, but you're making a pitch for Vote For Me that's a little bit different than some of the other ones that I've heard thus far. I actually remember when you announced you were running, I got your press release, just like all members of the media did. And what was interesting about it to me was you literally said in it some version of, and I'm probably paraphrasing you here a little bit, but like, I'm not an outsider. Or I'm not an outsider. I have been there. I have been elected to the Senate. I've served. I've seen how it works. I've seen how it doesn't work, etc. That experience is what we need this year. We need somebody that's going to get in there and be able to act immediately, know how to do it, know where to go, and has the right priorities. I actually thought it was a good pitch, honestly, because you're so used to hearing outsider candidates say that the system is broken and everyone inside of it is corrupt, and you hate that, right?
I hate it.
That's really what their argument is, right? Is that Augusta's terrible, Washington is terrible. You don't like any of it, so vote for somebody who has nothing to do with it. Right? You're making, I think, a more finely tuned argument, which is you should care about what I think and what I want to do, and you should vote for somebody who knows how to get it in and get it done. Tell me a little bit about that pitch and how it differentiates you from the other candidates.
Well, I think part of it is, you spoke about this when we first sat down here, is consultants. Consultants will love to take a poll. They'll love to take, a focus group and extrapolate it out into designing whatever candidate they have in front of them as a piece of clay, right? Like they're going to mold it into this person. And usually right now, just because of the time we're in, it's, this person is going to be an outsider and this person is going to be this and that and business owner, blah, blah, blah. I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate it. And I think voters, especially in the age of social media, deserve and demand authenticity. And I think the worst way to go about a campaign is to go out there and pretend that you're something that you're not. When I decided to get into this race, I told everybody around me, I'm not going to lie to people and tell them that I'm something that I'm not. I've signed both sides of a paycheck. I can make the business owner claim to. I have a very successful public relations company. I've bought and sold different businesses. My business partner and I, one of the worst things that we ever did was we started a bounce house rental company. That was delivered to your house, actually,
for a birthday party,
and it was a lot of hard work, but we were able to sell it, and that business is still going on today.
I can, by the way, I can give a little bit of street cred to Garrett that he came to my house to break it down afterwards.
I did.
He didn't have somebody else do it.
Yeah.
He was at my house doing it. So.
And we cleaned them and vacuumed them.
It was a great. Hey, listen, you did a great job, and it was a very popular birthday party item. So
they always are. But we did stuff like that, and we've done. My wife and I are very into real estate. My wife is a general contractor. She builds houses for people. I can make the business owner argument, but I've also been in the state legislature. The job that a lot of these people are looking to have, I know how to do. We demand experience in every place in life, but for some reason, consultants love to take the job of governor and say, no, the best person to do this job is somebody who's never even been inside the building. And there are times for that. When Donald Trump came into office, he was the right guy for the right time. The place needed a wrecking ball, and he came in. Paul LePage, right guy, right time. 2010, come in, sweep the place out. But look at what happened with Trump 2.0. He came in with experience as a politician. What we are living through is one of the most generational changes of government in our lifetime. And it's because he had the mix of both. He had business world experience, people experience, speaking experience, and government experience. He had all of those things.
Doesn't this get back to the question I asked you just a moment ago about sort of your time in office? LePage's first term,
Mm-hmm.
he came in office, and while there was very good things that happened, that first state budget was obviously one of them, where he lowered taxes. But my perception and remembrance of that time was a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
A lot of things in how he dealt with, frankly, his own caucus in the state Senate, how he dealt with the public, etc. And Paul LePage's second term was infinitely better than his first term in terms of how he actually operated as governor, I think.
Yep.
And I think the same thing is absolutely true of Donald Trump's time in office. When he got there the first time, the wrecking ball concept obviously works. I think it's absolutely necessary, but he was undermined by a lot of his own people. Like he was, I think, I'll even say, like probably naive in some ways about, I think, having a good idea in this respect, people will get on board with it. No, they won't.
100%.
And Trump 2.0 didn't make any of those mistakes.
Yeah, that's right.
So far.
He was signing executive orders. The second he got done swearing in, he was signing executive orders, and he knew what to do and how to do it. And I think I'm going to make the pitch that I feel comfortable with. And the pitch that I feel comfortable with is, I know where you are. I have stake in this game. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I have a wife. If I'm lucky enough to be this state's governor, okay, I will be 49 when I term out. Whatever I do during my time in office, I'm going to live with. And I have a unique set of experiences with government and private sector to not have to rely on somebody else to tell me how the job works. We don't have time right now in the space that we're in for on-the-job training. We don't have time for it. I'd vote for any one of the men in the Republican Party. On the Republican primary, I really would. But none of them have the breadth of experience that I do to actually go in and make the change that we need to make. I'll give you an example. Typically what happens, and this happened to Paul LePage, not his fault. Paul LePage got handed a budget from John Baldacci. And that's because that's just how it worked, right? You get handed a budget.
Well, the schedule dictates it, basically.
You have to.
Yeah.
Commissioners start preparing budgets in late August, early September. The governor has to submit a budget to the legislature in January, February of the next year. If you get elected as governor in November and you start planning your budget, even that week, let's say you do it the night after you give your acceptance speech, right? You lost. It's all over because you're getting Janet Mills' last budget, which right now is hovering around $12.3 billion with this new supplemental. You're going to get handed that. You can't go out there and tell people, I'm going to bring the budget back under control, back to like $7, $8, $9 billion when you're getting handed a $12 billion budget. You don't have the time.
Yeah.
You just don't. It's a factor of time. I'm not going to need to do that. I've negotiated budgets. I negotiated budgets when Governor LePage was in office. I negotiated budgets in a split control legislature where the Democrats were in control of the House and we were in control of the Senate. That's a benefit that only I can bring. Only I can bring in this race. I know how to do that right away. You also have to be ready to put bills in the hopper. And yeah, governor can put a bill in anytime, sure. But good luck telling the legislature in April that you've put in a brand new bill for a brand new policy change. That's going to get a nice public hearing and sent right down the door to be killed immediately. You got to have bills ready to go by the time that you get in, that you're sworn in.
And even if you didn't mechanically, it's also like probably the best political moment for you to do it.
It is.
Right? You just got elected.
You're
probably the most popular you'll ever be.
That's right. Yeah, it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
But you got to be ready to go with those policy changes, not just in the budget, but the individual policy changes that really need to be done through a bill. And so the preparation of being governor starts in September the year before you're even elected. And so I think that's important for people to know, is that the only way that you can know that is if you're there. And the second danger of that is if you're just relying on consultants who may or may not have been around during that time to do that work for you, you're not doing the job. The best consultant is yourself. And you have to have the courage, tenacity, and know-how to get the job done. And I can do that.
So let's talk a little bit about why you need to do it and why you have to hit the ground running so quickly and effectively. we talked a lot about LePage and your time in office. In the 8 years since then,
Mhm.
you've had a completely different perspective in state government.
Yeah.
Janet Mills has been governor for basically 8 years now, and in that time, she has had a 100% Democratic majority and a fairly strong one in both the state house and the state senate the entire time. And as we're seeing right now, they're doing essentially whatever they want.
Yeah.
Even yesterday, they ended up passing in the House a ranked choice voting expansion, which I think we all know is
Their version of the SAVE Act.
correct. It is. It's intended basically to help them win the next governor's race.
It is.
Which I suppose we could even tangle with that as a topic by itself. But for the time being, we can ignore it to just point out that they have raised the state budget. They have changed fundamentally the healthcare picture in the state. Everything from education to housing has been affected by their policies.
Yes.
For 8 years. So tell me, as you consider walking in the door on day one and having those executive orders ready to sign the moment you raise your hand and swear yourself in, what are those first most critical things that you have to tackle if nothing else gets changed?
So I do want to touch on what you just said because it's important for people to understand. They own it. The Democrats own this economy. There has not been one Republican vote, not one, on any of the budgets that Janet Mills has passed. Not one. And the way they do that is through a little trick called early adjournment. They go in and they get the budget done before end of March. And the reason that they do that is because they don't need a majority. So they can slam through a budget with no Republican
Supermajority.
Without a supermajority. I'm sorry, a 2/3 majority. They can do that without any Republican support and get exactly what they want. Exactly what they want. Spend as much money as they want.
And it's probably important to note that is unusual. I remember that first LePage budget that we've talked about a couple times already.
Yes.
You guys could have done that.
Oh my gosh. We went to
lengths.
We went to lengths to try to include them.
Not only did you do that, but Emily Kane later bragged about having been part of that budget when she was running for Congress.
She did. And it is, when you look back in life, talk about decision points. I was just a freshman member. Like I had no business, even knowing this. We should have done it.
Right.
Like we should have done it.
If you saw the future, you would have.
We would have.
Yeah.
We would have gotten things like right to work. We would have, made some energy policy changes that would have just now been able to be impacting our rates. We would have been able to do a lot, but we were doing things the way that they had been done. And that if we have a Republican majority, it's going to be real hard for me not to encourage the leadership in the House and the Senate to do that because that's what they've done to us for 8 years. And look at the hole that we're in.
Yeah. Well, you kind of almost have to in order to undo.
You have to.
The hole.
You have to. It's mutually assured destruction in a way because they've done this to us for 8 years. And if we're blessed enough that the voters give us a majority and a governor's office, you have to do it. You have to do it. And so that's something I would commit to right away. But
I suppose on the bright side, they can't really complain if you do.
They can't. I mean, what are you going to say?
I mean, they did choose to do it first.
That's right.
Yeah.
They did it, and they broke it, and now we're going to have to go fix it. But, when you look at what they have done, the spending alone, you're looking at 70% increase. The last budget that I voted on was $7.1 billion, and that was in 2017. $7.1 billion. It's now well over 12. And that's not sustainable. The population hasn't changed that much. The tax base hasn't changed that much.
Inflation's nowhere near that.
It's not even close. And so you have to go in and address that right away. But when you look at what's going on in this state, like we have a rash of problems that you have to contend with at the same time. And I think the first one that you have to agree with is affordability, and affordability covers so many things. It's not any one single thing. It's the best way you can describe it is probably what people look at their kitchen table every Saturday night when they do their budget with their spouse, right? It's your housing costs, it's energy, it's healthcare, which is a huge issue. It's the things that you have to pay for in your everyday life. You have to target those things, and so many of the things that we're suffering from are because of the policies of this administration and this legislature. Where all of these problems can be helped, not solved, because I think there's an individual element to a lot of things as well, but that we can get to work on right away.
So let's talk about one of those. Housing comes to mind for me. It's one of those issues that I bring up almost every interview that we talk about because it's so choking off the lifeblood of the state.
Yeah.
Just about a week ago or so, the city of Portland, in response to all the ICE stuff, made a request to Janet Mills to institute a statewide eviction moratorium to deal with the fallout from the ICE thing. And it just struck me as like the last in a very long line of absolutely asinine decisions that the state and many municipalities have made along the way that have taken what used to be, when I was growing up, viewed as an affordable place to live.
Yeah.
I mean, sincerely, this was a good place to move to if the other place was more expensive. And now it's actually among the higher cost of living places in the entire country. And a lot of that is housing related.
Yeah.
How do you tackle that problem from the governor's perspective because of the complexity of the issue?
Yeah.
So many things contribute to it, and many of them are state policy, but many of them aren't. And how do you make use of the position that you have to try to do something about it?
So I think one of the things that is really important along the lines of housing is you have to look at the full picture. And I think everybody loves to draw attention to this report that the governor's office put out about housing, 80,000 units. We're short 80,000 units that we need in order to, basically just fulfill basic demand in the state in the coming years. I don't refute that. I think that's true. I used to be a realtor. We have some of the oldest housing stock in the entire country, the most inefficient housing stock in the entire country. We have a building crisis that we need to do. My wife is a general contractor. As I've said, she builds homes. Simply saying that we're going to build ourselves out of this mess isn't good enough. That's not, there's elements that we have to do. Of course, we have to ramp up production. I think there's a place for affordable housing. I think there's certain incentives that are important that we need to continue along. I think the advent of things like modular housing, manufactured housing, I think the real estate community is lagging behind on that. They like to they don't really love to talk about that, especially when they're selling or buying a house for someone. I think that's an important piece. But you have to separate housing into what you can do now and what you can do in the future. And you have to do both. The first thing that I will do as governor, because I believe that it's vitally important, anything in business is access to capital. If you want to start a business, you have to have access to capital, whether that be through your own savings or whether that be through an SBA loan or a family member who wants to grant you money. If you want to start a business, most of the time you have to have some access to capital. We have to free up capital for the housing market. And the best way that we can do that is by reusing what we have. I'm going to give you an example. Me personally, I bought the house that I grew up in. So I bought the house from my parents that I now live in with my wife and daughter. We bought it from my dad in 2020. And if you remember anything about that time, rates were 2.5% to 3%.
You didn't have any interest at all.
Right. They were paying you to take this money. I remember talking to the president of my credit union at the time. The liquidity that they had was out of control. They could lend to anybody for anything. We still have that mortgage today. However, we'd like to move out of the house.
Yeah, but you won't get rid of that. Yeah.
You could get
quite literally. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. I know you are.
I have a fairly large house, but I'm a little smaller than I need.
Yeah, exactly.
But I have a great rate.
Exactly. And it makes it really hard to move. And so that's why you're seeing so much stagnation on the market. You're seeing people who they put a house up on the market. They can't get the price that they want. Sits there for 4 or 5 months. And the market isn't moving because people can't afford to give up their house and they can't afford to get into something new.
Which is explaining some of the mismatch between supply and demand.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And so one of the first things we have to do is we have to get the banks and credit unions in the room. It's going to be one of the first things I do. I probably won't even be governor yet before I have this meeting. Banks and credit unions have to be part of this solution. And the first thing that they can do is they can bring mortgages in-house, a select group of mortgages in-house, and they can make those mortgages saleable and portable. Now, what that means is for someone like me, someone like you, who have a great rate, we're raising families, right? We need something different, but we have a low rate. What that means for us is we probably need something bigger. or newer. And so you having the ability to take that debt load with you to something that costs more money and has the ability to provide what you need, but you don't have to lose that payment, frees up your current house to be bought by somebody who was you 10 years ago, who was me 5 years ago. And it allows you to be financially solvent and get something new. And you just take a second mortgage out for the balance of
Why
what,
are they
of
doing
what
that
else
now?
you have. You want me to tell you why? It's because so much of what has happened with banking is through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They have to bundle these mortgages in a certain way and have certain requirements on these loans in a certain way so that they can be clumped together and sold on the open market. I'm not saying that's bad. I actually think it's very, very important to do that, because if you didn't do that, you'd be creating the same problem I'm trying to solve. You have to have movable mortgage products that are uniform, obviously, but you also have to be able to have products that are managed at a smaller level to be able to do things like this, so they don't have to conform. We have our mortgage at a local bank, and they provide different rates. If you want to keep it in-house, it's a slightly higher rate, quarter point, half point more. But if you got in trouble, you lost your job, something happened, you can call that bank and say, hey, I'm having some trouble this month. Could I make an interest-only payment? Could I, and you're talking to the guy that's actually servicing your loan, all the while being able to continue to pay the rate that you got back in 2020.
Yeah.
That's really important for families. That's a pro-family policy, being able to move ahead while not falling behind. Mortgage portability is a really important solution, and banks have to be part of that. There's a lot of banks who have been trying to find out if somebody's assumed a mortgage without their permission and calling those loans. That's happening. It's happening all over the country. And it's because it's an opportunity to move somebody who had a 2.5% rate and move them into a 7% rate.
Right.
It's a money-making venture. And we are in a crisis level event in housing in Maine, and banks need to be part of that solution, and credit unions do as well. We already allow this with veterans loans. Right now, if you're a veteran, you can get a VA home loan. Fantastic product, fantastic benefit for somebody who's in the military, right? Low, sometimes no interest home mortgage. Part of the benefit of that loan is you can sell it. And so that makes your home so much more valuable if you're able to sell that loan. The better benefit of that is, say a non-veteran buys your home and assumes your mortgage, they can also sell that mortgage.
Oh, interesting.
And so we already offer these products. We already do these things.
But is that stuff dictated by federal policy?
Some of it is. Yeah.
So do you need them to be able to move or change things in order for this kind of thing to happen?
Not for an in-house mortgage. And there's severability clauses in every mortgage. If you read your 20, 30-page mortgage doc, you have to get permission if you want to sell your loan. And that's in there. Just banks don't want you to do it because they don't get the opportunity to move you into a higher interest rate. Banks and credit unions need to be part of this solution. And in very limited circumstances, they will allow assumability of a mortgage or portability of a mortgage. And this is not just important for families who need to move up. It's also important for seniors who need to move down. And, imagine the flip side of that. You're a senior, you're trying to sell your house. Maybe you want to sell it to a family member. You allow them to assume your, let's fast forward you and I 30 years, right? Say you still had a mortgage that was a really low interest rate. Why wouldn't you want to give that to your kid if they're going to buy the house? Or why wouldn't you want to give that to a family who wants to buy your house? It makes your product more marketable, and it frees up the market for people who need to get into something different. And that generates more housing along with building more. You have to bring the finance people to the table, because as governor, you will have a lot of soft power. You have the bully pulpit. And when you bring the presidents, those banks and credit unions in, and you say, guys, I understand you want to make more money. I totally respect that. But we're in a situation where you need to help out. And you're either going to help out or we're going to make you help out. and we're not going to cause you to lose any money. This is a solution for Maine people, and you need to try to provide it because you're putting it in your mortgage contracts and you just don't want them to exercise the policy. That's a very important piece of freeing up housing right now. We already have these tools. We already do them through the VA. We have second mortgages. We have home equity line of credits. We have these mortgages products available. We need to put them all together.
So I know you mentioned that with the report and the sort of supply shortage and everything else, that's not the entire part of the picture, but it is a part of the picture.
Huge part of the picture.
Pretty big part. And, some analysis we've done have definitely pinned the policies that, especially in places like Portland, but now increasingly in other Maine communities as well, have undertaken, has basically undercut profitability to the point where there's no reason to do a building project.
100%.
There's something we're not going to build here. It's not going to do anything for me. So it's essentially like you've moved the supply curve sideways to the point where it's actually at equilibrium. So how do you contend with municipalities making insane decisions related to, and I'll go ahead and list them: rent control, inclusionary zoning, minimum lot sizes, height restrictions, and about 50 other things?
Yeah.
Those are causing people who would otherwise want to build something to not build something. And when you have a shortage that exists for whatever reason, whether it's home mortgages or anything else, that's never going to be solved if that profitability is non-existent. And in Portland right now, it's non-existent.
That's right. So, I won't say unfortunately. In Maine, we have home rule. You have a lot of authority to do what you want to do, but there are definitely some towns in this state that have taken that to a brand new level. I'll give you one example that adds about $20,000-$30,000 to the cost of a home. There's a few communities in the state. It's not many, but it's all in the places where people want to live.
That's a big part of this. It's worst in the best places.
It is.
Yeah.
Gorham.
Yeah.
Gorham has a requirement that any new single-family dwelling has to have a full house sprinkler system. As someone who's very familiar with building code, that's a $20,000-$30,000 cost. That if you go to, I don't think Wyndham has it, but if you go to Wyndham, they don't have that. You don't have to. You could build the same house without a sprinkler system for $30,000 less. There is an element of towns that are kind of like, if that's what you want to do, you have that's going to be your problem. But one of the things that we can do right away is we need to remove some restrictions on building. I'm going to give you an example. We hook on towns over 5,000 people. We hook them to national building code standards, right? Huge mistake, especially the way that people build houses in Maine. My wife and I were doing a project in Lisbon, actually Sabatis, and the codes changed halfway through the build. And you had to do a different level of insulation in attic spaces than you did the day before. Now, luckily, we had a code enforcement officer who understood the plight of our circumstance and the fact that we'd already bought this insulation. We were in the middle of a project, and they were understanding of that. But that's the kind of stuff that when you dictate from some other place that isn't Maine centric, that, they just changed the code, so you got to do this mid-project. That's the kind of stuff you can't do. A lot of people in Maine also, with these building standards, is people like to build their house piecemeal. Like, I know a lot of people. I have friends that had a trailer on their lot, and they picked away at their house as they went along. Depending on where you live, you might not be able to do that. So the building code standards have to change. Having that 5,000 town limit is not, and you have to raise it.
But you mentioned home rule. I mean, how do you make it happen?
Yeah, you have. Well, with home rule, so much of that is dictated from the state level. Like that building code standard is a state mandate, and so you have to get rid of things like that. I think other things that you can do from the state level, which is pro housing. I was very much in favor of the ADU legislation that passed through the legislature. That has opened up my wife's business. Like, that's opened up a lot of opportunity for her to build. It's also offered a lot of, in my opinion, it's another very pro-family policy that gives you the opportunity for that grandparent to like size down or build an ADU out back and be closer to their family. By moving in their family to a bigger house. I think that's something that you can do to kind of overrule some of this overreaching home rule policies that are happening. The other thing is I would love to pass a bill that would ban rent control. That would save so much of what's going on in Portland right now. My wife and I lived in Portland for a short period of time after I left the legislature, and we got out at the right time because we were looking around. Oh, man, it would be fun to have like a 4-unit down here. We could live here, blah, blah, blah. I'm so glad we never pulled the trigger on that. You have rent control going on there now, a huge problem that's driving costs through the ceiling. Banning that would be great. But those are the kind of policies you have to look at what these towns are doing and just say, no, we're not going to allow you to do that.
Would you have any sort of willingness or interest in like using financial incentives for those towns to do it? One idea I've heard recently is to tie general assistance funding or some of the state aid to towns and whatnot to them enacting certain policies. Like we will give you extra or we will take away if you don't.
Yeah.
Your policies will matter with how much we give you.
I actually do have a lot of interest in that. And I think that I think it's probably too long for this podcast. I have a similar idea about hospitals and tying outcomes to what they're going to have to pay in or not pay in. I think it's very important to use a carrot as much as possible, but always have the stick if appropriate.
Well, you mentioned affordability, obviously, and housing is only one of many parts of that. Another one that we talk about an awful lot is energy. I only bring that one up, not just because it's a big problem, but it's also one that just keeps slapping me in the face. Like, I get my own personal bill, and every time I do, it looks like there's a reason for an increase that's coming. But also, in terms of state policy, you're constantly hearing Janet Mills make claims, Hannah Pingree make claims about the state's energy picture and why it's so expensive. We heard this in her State of the State just a couple weeks ago. She basically blamed fossil fuels for why we are in a tough financial position.
I was shocked. It was one of my jaw hit the floor when she said that.
Well, there's obviously real reasons why it's so expensive. So as you evaluate that issue and what you would, of course, ultimately end up doing for governor, I have to imagine that's probably a lot of the work is cleaning up that energy picture in some fashion so that people just stop getting slammed by this bill that never seems to go down.
Yeah. So energy is one of the things that's holding our state back on so many fronts. You probably remember this, but I remember when Governor LePage was in office and he was working with, I think it was Airbus. It could have been Boeing. I can't remember, but they were looking to do a new factory on the East Coast. I think it was to manufacture the 737s, and Maine had a lot of advantages. Just our position on the planet. It's faster to fly to Europe from Maine than it is from someplace else on the East Coast. We had a lot of advantages. And I remember in the end, I think we were competing against South Carolina. And I remember being in the Senate and thinking, oh, well, we're going to lose because it's right to work. They have right to work legislation and we don't, and that's going to be it. It wasn't that. It was energy. Energy is what killed the deal. There's another example. There's a company called Smartlam. They're based in Montana, and they were looking to put another facility. They do pressed fibers, so cross-laminated timber, which Maine has the literal perfect mix for cross-laminated timber in our forests right now. That's a whole other subject matter. So we had the product that they needed. We had the workforce that they needed. But they built their second factory in Alabama because of energy. So you have a business problem, you have a housing problem, you have a jobs problem, and you have a kitchen table problem, all derived from energy. And you also have a food problem, which we'll get to in a minute. And this is all because of bad policy from the left. And this goes back all the way to the 90s. This goes back to Angus King with wind turbines. This is bad energy policy in Maine has a history that goes back almost 40 years. And so one of the things I care about deeply in this campaign is telling Mainers the truth, no matter how much it hurts, because sometimes the truth hurts. It's going to take a while to unwind Maine's energy policy. You have to look at it in short, medium, and long-term plans. The long-term plans I won't see enacted during my time in office. But you can
put on a path.
But you can put them on a path. So let's start with the short term. If you look at the ISO right now, anybody can do it. You can go to Google the ISO New England. We buy our energy as a consortium with the rest of the New England states. I think it's one of the things that gets lost in translation in these conversations. It's not just Maine, it's all of New England. Right now, natural gas is what's providing.
It's like 50%.
It is it. That's how we get energy in this state. And we have to get more of it. It's a simple supply and demand situation. We have two problems. We don't get enough, and the ways that we do get it aren't able to handle the demand. So as governor, I'd like to start tackling that problem right away. And the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to bring a lawsuit against Massachusetts and New York for violation of the Commerce Clause for not allowing LNG natural gas pipelines into the ISO New England grid. We have to get an answer on that from the Supreme Court. I believe those two states have been active in causing our energy bills to go up. And if we were allowed to build out things like the Constellation pipeline, we would have more natural gas into the ISO New England grid. So that's one thing I'd initiate right away. The second thing I would do is, this is a federal approach, but another thing I haven't run from, I do lobby work right now. I lobby.
You're the dreaded lobbyist.
I am the dreaded lobbyist.
Yeah.
But done work for Maine Farm Bureau.
I say that, by the way, as a dreaded lobbyist.
I was going to say you're registered too. One of the benefits that I offer is that Maine doesn't have to hire a lobbyist. A lot of states hire lobbyists to do federal government work. You won't have to hire one with me. I know how to do this. I want to contact Senator Mike Lee's office right away. And I believe I've heard other governor's candidates talk about this bill as well. But Mike Lee has a bill that would repeal the Jones Act. I think that is a critical thing to do right now, especially for Maine. The Jones Act essentially says that you have to build, buy, manufacture, and use American products for shipbuilding and for anything with a federal product.
Which sounds wonderful.
It sounds great.
Yeah.
Huge problem.
Yeah. It's a total disaster, by the way.
It is a total disaster.
It is.
So we bring into the ISO New England grid, we bring in 27 tankers of LNG from foreign countries because of the Jones Act. 27 tankers every single winter because we don't have the capacity. So what happens is another country will build a tanker for like $200 million, and you go to Jamaica, you go to Trinidad, Tobago, you go to Russia, and you fill up with LNG and you bring it into port in Massachusetts. We have plenty of American-made LNG in the Gulf of America right now. The problem is you can't take a foreign flag vessel from one American port into another American port. That violates the Jones Act. It costs $700 million to build the same tanker under Jones Act provisions as it does to build it someplace else. If you repeal the Jones Act, you can take a vessel, a foreign flag vessel, from the Gulf of America to Massachusetts. It'll be cheaper and it'll be faster. We have to repeal the Jones Act. It is detrimental to our energy policy. It's also something that, crazy enough, it was designed to be a national security item. It's harming our national security by keeping it the way that it is.
It's one of those things. I'm glad you brought this up. Nobody else talks about the Jones Act.
Yeah.
But it's also one of these things that, and it's like rent control. It's like, it sounds good.
Sounds great.
Sounds like a sensible idea.
Yep.
But in the actual end, it ultimately is almost counterproductive to its own means, because the rules that they've set up basically make people circumvent them in certain ways that empower foreign governments and actually hurt American businesses. It's wild, the second and third level effects of this kind of a policy.
We have never had a Jones Act compliant LNG tanker ever built since the Jones Act was implemented, I believe, in the 60s.
Yeah, because it doesn't make any economic sense.
We're not building one.
Right.
It's not going to happen. And so we need to fix that. In the short term, the president can grant a waiver from the Jones Act. He can grant a waiver. I have great relationships with the Trump administration. I will ask for a waiver on day one for that. That will happen before I'm even sworn in. We will ask in preparation of the next winter, for the winter of 27-28. We will try to get a waiver from the president. President Biden gave one to Puerto Rico during Hurricane Maria. It's the first time it was ever granted, and I believe this president will do the same, and it will save big money for the ratepayer. The other thing that you have to do is you have to obviously explore these other options. Like I've heard small modular nuclear reactors talked about as the be-all end-all, right? Well, yes, we absolutely have to do that. Like we have to explore that and get that done. There's places that it's happening around us in Canada, and I think not Brunswick, Loring is talking about that. We have to do that, but that's a long-term solution. It's not going to happen overnight. We also have to, when you look at what we've been doing, there's some things we have to get rid of. Industrial solar and wind, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in Maine. We have to find
pretty low on the totem pole in the ISO New England.
Oh yeah, you look at it.
Suggested everybody
go
read.
It's like not. You have to actually click into renewables. So it like lists everything. You click into renewables, and then it's like solar. Right? It's not even that.
Yeah,
it's not even that. And so we have to get away from that, because I think one of the unintended consequences that people aren't talking about large scale solar specifically is, people's grocery bills are out of control. Like, I think a lot of that has come down. President Trump's done a good job of changing some things nationally that have brought the price of groceries maybe not down, but at least to inflationary levels. But we are paying farmers to not farm. And it's not the farmer's fault. If you're going to get $2,500 an acre for 20 years from a solar developer, pretty hard to pass that up. And so there's a lot of farmers who are foregoing planting crops because we've overbuilt solar to a degree that is hurting us both on our energy bill and our grocery bill. So I think that's one of the unintended consequences that's happened because of solar development and the, sacrificing food at the altar of green energy. Like we've done that here in Maine, and we have to reverse it. And so the other thing that I think the next governor is going to have to contend with is the PUC. The PUC is a 3-member quasi-judicial organization that sets rates for power in the state of Maine and sets, reviews projects and all these other things. The next governor isn't going to have a majority on the PUC until 2029, almost till the end of their term. That's a 3-member board, and Phil Bartlett will still be on it until 2031. And so one of the bills I'd like to put in, and you can call it what it is, but I want to add 2 seats to the PUC right away.
You're packing the court.
Packing the court, baby.
The court.
I want to add 2 seats to the PUC right away because we don't have time. We have to implement some of these energy changes right away. And, if you look at all of those things that I just talked about, that will give you rate relief right away. And we also will have a path towards future responsible, cheap energy exploration. Not exploration, but energy availability for the state. And so you start doing that and you start solving your food problem. You start solving your jobs problem. You start solving your industry problem. There's so many problems you solve if you fix the energy problem.
Yeah, I know one that is also frequently talked about is obviously net energy billing.
Yeah.
And trying to do something related to that cost that's thrown onto consumers.
Well, and the other problem you have there too is, you have people who have made 20-year plans based on things like net energy billing.
Right.
You have businesses who came and invested here. And so you have to ramp down from that pretty quickly. And you got to find a way to do it responsibly. And so net energy billing is a huge problem. I think that was passed, I think it was the year after I left the legislature. But yeah, the energy billing is a huge, huge problem. Huge problem.
Well, another area I'd love to kind of tackle with you also is one that we haven't had an opportunity to talk about with many of the candidates, but I know it's something you're passionate about, and it's something that has recently come back in my head a little bit as well with some of the things we've seen nationally and elsewhere. But that's the issue of crime. In talking to many people interested in this issue, you will frequently hear pushback on the idea that crime is getting worse or that there's an issue or a problem to even tackle here. And oftentimes they cite statistics. Yeah. And look, I'm a think tank CEO, so I like numbers and statistics and charts just as much as the next guy. But this is one of those classic cases, in my opinion, where that is very manipulatable and it doesn't tell the real story.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is it that Maine has to contend with as it relates to the crime issue? Is it truly a problem? Is it getting worse? And if so, how and why, and how do you tackle it?
It is. And I think people were alerted to this. It's been going on for a while, but I think people were alerted to it by two events. Number one, the Lewiston shooting. I think that drew, it drew attention to just crime statistics in general, because, people love to say Maine's the safest state in the nation, but now we have this horrible thing that's happened here. And people started to look at, like, am I really safe here? And I think the answer is generally yes. But the other thing that I think drew a lot of attention to this, and to his great credit, is Steve Robinson and the expose on Chinese weed in the state. I think those two things have been cultural events that have said, wait a minute, we have a problem here and we need to investigate it. And then you can't deny the third piece. And the third piece is there is crime going on everywhere. You can't deny it anymore. There are certain places in this state that I won't let my wife and daughter go to alone. I'm 40 years old. That did not happen when I was a kid.
It didn't happen just a few years ago.
No.
I used to share this anecdote every once in a while, but I started playing in a men's league baseball league in Portland around COVID. When that happened, it was a great thing to be active and to go do, and I had missed playing baseball, so I started doing it. And they play predominantly in Deering Oaks Park.
Oh, my Lord.
Well, you say, oh, my Lord, but what's interesting about that is, while it's never been like a haven or anything, but it absolutely was a place you could go.
100%.
And when I first started playing, my wife and kids would come watch. And isn't that neat? Dad's playing baseball. And maybe 2 years into it, I couldn't justify even inviting them anymore. I mean, I would park my car and I would be accosted by somebody either selling or buying drugs or both. You would go to a porta potty really briefly and you would see nothing but needles inside of it. In fact, that very same porta potty I'm referencing was the site of a sexual assault that took place at Deering Oaks Park 2 weeks after I noticed it.
Yeah.
It got bad quick. And then you had the homelessness problem that was on top of it. And it just cascaded and it was exponential very quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm also told at the exact same time, nope, no problem. There's nothing really going on. This is just anecdotal. And I see it with my eyes.
You see it with your own eyes. Yeah. And what we're being told is this isn't the crime you're looking for.
Right.
The
numbers say.
This number says this, and we're the safest state in the country and all this. We know better than that. Mainers know better than that. I haven't had a lock on my door in many, many years. We now have an alarm system. And that's because there's been some stuff that has happened in my own town that have been less than desirable, right? The other thing too is if people want to throw around facts, I can throw around some facts too. I'm a county commissioner in Androscoggin County. The Androscoggin County Jail used to make about $700,000 a year. We used to make money off of our jail. You fast forward now, in our last budget, we were paying over $1 million in boarding fees. So you go from making money to losing significant amount of money, almost a $2 million swing in a $17 million budget. It's a huge amount of money, and it's because of the increased crime in the Lewiston Auburn area. It's happening everywhere. You add that on top, you have an access to justice issue that I don't think people are talking about. We do not.
You're talking about public defenders?
I'm talking about public defenders.
Yeah.
I'm talking about bench time. I'm talking about judges. The Constitution, one of our very fundamental rights, is access to a speedy trial. A speedy trial is not 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I had a personal situation.
Oh, but it's all COVID.
It's all
Garrett.
COVID.
It's the waiting list from COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
But like one of
It's
the
2026 and people are still
saying it. I know. But one of the things that's really interesting is like, our family had an issue with an unstable member of our family who kind of made some threats against us, ended up getting arrested and all this. But like, there wasn't any kind of resolution for years. And this person was put out on bail multiple times. Very low bail. You have activist judges who are literally going to the bottom of the barrel for bail so that anybody can get out. You also have judges who are just saying, we don't have anywhere to put them, so go ahead. And so that constitutional right isn't about the victim all the time. I mean, isn't about the criminal. It's about the victim as well. And victims need access and resolution to the crime perpetrated against them. And when you don't have jails to put people in, you have crime ramping up everywhere. You're violating people's very fundamental constitutional rights to live in a safe and secure society. And we're seeing that in Maine all over the place. Don't tell me that I'm not seeing what I'm seeing, because I see it and everyone else around me sees it too. And so we have to do a better job of prosecuting. We have to do a better job of standing behind our law enforcement. We have had vacancies on the state police for decades, Matt, decades. We have had it. And that's because there are getting to be very fewer and fewer people who are willing to risk their life in that position, because they're not sure if their government's going to have their back.
Right.
They're just not sure. And so there's so many aspects of this that are contributing to people's quality of life. And
isn't there also a Maine law problem too? I mean, one that just
Yes.
recently came to my mind, obviously this week, because it just kind of had to, was Elliot Cutler. I mean, that guy was found to have obviously committed a heinous crime. And that was now at this point a couple years ago. And his sentence for it was 9 months. And he got out a month early for good behavior.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get on this podcast and get too dark about what that crime was and what he was doing, but it's, child pornography and the stuff that was in there. You're talking thousands of images and videos, horrendously awful things.
It wasn't oops, I clicked on a link. It wasn't
even
that.
though he keeps saying that.
Yeah, my word.
But it's just beyond awful, right?
Yeah.
And he gets basically no sentence. And then after he gets out of jail early for good behavior, he now on 3 separate occasions has violated parole.
Yeah.
And it's in different situations each time. But
And this man almost became governor.
And if not for ranked choice voting, might have been.
He would have been.
Probably. But anyway, time 1, bail. Time 2, bail. But with given a very stern warning this time, not again.
You better not do that again.
Picked up again, and who knows whether he gets bail or not. He's in court again right now. But I look at this, regular people look at this, and we can't understand how Maine law or judges would allow this kind of thing to happen. This is the type of person I think we're kind of all in agreement should be buried under the jail.
And throw away the key. But
nobody in Augusta is sponsoring a bill.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking. The governor's not saying anything. I mean,
so you're touching,
I'm at a loss.
You're touching on an issue, and it's because there has been a loosening of the law. There has been. I used to chair the Criminal Justice Committee. I was responsible for the criminal code in the legislature in my first term. There has been a very significant push to do things like get rid of cash bail. That's a massive problem. That would be horrendous for society if you got rid of cash bail. That's almost passed multiple times. You also have another issue. I think some people think that compassion is allowing people to do drugs openly in the street. Like that's a compassionate thing. Like they shouldn't be thrown in jail.
Their life is already tough enough.
And why are you doing that to them? And it's like, but I also have the right to live in a safe and clean society. And we have to start enforcing laws that just are where you have people, that's not compassion, leaving somebody out on the street to do that, whether they want the help or not. you have to give them options. You have to either say clean up or you are going to go to jail. There's pieces of our criminal code that need to be beefed up, like vagrancy and open air drug consumption. I think those are two of the really big things. But you also have to start arresting people when they do heinous things. Like, Elliot Cutler should never walk the streets again. And he had a position of public trust, which makes it even worse, and I feel like should be an aggregating factor, to be honest with you. But we have to start taking crime seriously, because I think so many times we're not using the criminal justice system for what it should be used for, and that's deterrence.
Yeah. So Garrett, we're getting sort of towards the tail end of our conversation here today. So I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the politics of all this. You're in a primary. Yeah. And we've done these interviews for so many different candidates, right? It's for many. I was at a coffee this morning where I had this deer in headlights look from the person I was talking with when they were talking about the choice for governor. Like, what do I think of these people? What do you think? Please tell me what to do, is what this conversation sounded like. And I think it comes from the fact that there's many candidates, some of whom are very similar, some of whom aren't, but it's hard to sort through it all. It's hard to figure out, which one of these many good options can I pick? You mentioned that you'd vote for any of these people, and I think that alludes to the fact that there's a lot of good talent that's running this year. I actually think that's a good thing. There's a lot of options which sound good, but you think you're the best option. Yep. And you're hoping that a lot of other people think that too. So as you differentiate yourself, I think we've talked about some of the things you see yourself as being different about, but ultimately, what is the main pitch here? Why you instead of person X, Y, or Z?
We talked about it. I think, my overarching goal in government in general is to make government as inconsequential in your life as I can possibly make it. That's been my guiding government philosophy since I took office in 2010, is I don't want you to think about the government as a central piece of your life. I want independence for Maine people. I want the people of Maine to think of their government as something that's necessary but not central to their life. I think the next Maine governor, I don't think you need the same type of governor every time. I think different times call for different people. I think history dictates that. I think for this time, you need experience, and you need someone who's been through the battles and proven. And I think I'm the best person that's delivered that. But I think third, and what probably differentiates me from most of the candidates, is I have significant stake in the game. A lot of these guys, and I'm not making an age comparison, although maybe I am, are on the tail end of their career. I'm 40 years old. I have a wife and I have a 5-year-old daughter. Like I said earlier in this podcast, if I'm lucky enough to term out as governor, I'll be 49. I'm not going to be retired for many years after I leave here. I was born here. They'll plant me here. I'm going to live by the policies that I myself implement here in this state. And I think we need a governor who has stake in the game for the future. It is no secret that Maine is the oldest state by median age in the country.
I'm still younger than it.
It's me too. It's 44.8 years old, and I'm 40. We need somebody who understands the plight of the modern millennial and can get people to understand that Maine really is the best place to live, work, and start a family and do business. I've said this for many years, back when I ran for governor the first time. Maine's governor has to be an ambassador to the world. Has to be. And we have an incredible story to sell. And I want to be the one to go and sell it. I think we have, I really am endlessly hopeful about the future of Maine. I love the people here. My family's been here on both sides for 200 years. And I hope that after 8 years, I can put a dent into ensuring that my daughter and her family someday will be able to stay here too. And so I think that's what makes me different, is those three big things. Like I said, I think the Republican Party, we always have an uphill climb in Maine, and we have to work together after this is all over. I know I'm committed to working with any of the candidates who make it to the finish line. And I hope they feel the same way about me.
The last part of this is, of course, what you would face if you won the primary, obviously. When I asked that question, none of the candidates seem to bite on the idea that they're the best one against the Democratic candidate. Although I suspect you probably believe that, but it's not really brought up a lot, which is sort of interesting to me. And I think maybe part of that is how complex the general election picture is going to be. I mean, you're going to have a Republican candidate. You will have a Democratic candidate. You'll also have Rick Bennett. Is it or is it not with ranked choice voting? I don't know, and neither do you until probably months in the future.
Right.
So how do you even judge best against anything when you don't even know the playing rules that you're playing with, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have some things that are fundamental to this race. You have a midterm year for a Republican president. You have, after 8 years of fatigue from party in power in Maine.
Yeah.
A lot of these things work together. So how do you view the general election matchup? I know some of it's going to be dependent on which one of them wins on the Democratic side.
Yeah.
But some of it not. Tell me more about how you view this general election matchup.
So I view it. The other one you mentioned too is if Ed Crockett gets on the ballot, that's another whole story. I mean, Ed Crockett's very popular, Portland independent representative, and depending on what the ballot looks like, will kind of dictate the way that things go. Are we going to use ranked choice voting or are we not? That makes the race very, very differently. But, to kind of bring it full circle, you can win an election in Maine with hard work. It's good. It's
one of the first things you said today.
Yeah. It's, I don't care what kind of election we're going to run. I don't care how the Democrats are trying to pass their own version of the SAVE Act and destroy Republicans. I don't care about any of that. What I know and what I believe that Donald Trump has showed Republicans is that when you articulate conservative values to the people and tell them how those values are going to meet their needs in the modern world, you can win any election. And that's going to be my message to Maine people, is that I believe that conservative, free market capitalism, conservative pro-family values are the way that we can solve our problems. Because why you're seeing so much success in a guy like Graham Plattner, for example, is Graham Plattner is offering to solve the people's problems, but he's usually using socialism to do it. He's articulating it in a powerful way. You have to have somebody who can articulate in the governor's race why conservative values can solve their problems. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out there and tell them that. All of these people, me, Rick Bennett, Hannah Pingree, if she makes it through, Nirav Shah, Shenna Bellows on their side, we all have a record. And it's very clear where people stand. And so articulating that solution, getting people to come out to vote, you have to be able to know how to operate a campaign infrastructure. I've done that. And it's no matter what kind of election we have, you can't ignore the fundamentals of just going out and talking to people. And so we're going to articulate our vision. We're going to talk to as many people as we can. Unfortunately, part of this game is raising money. You got to do that.
Which I'm sure you can do at your website right now.
Yes, you can. You can go to masonformaine.com and donate right now. But yeah, I mean, general election is definitely an uphill climb. But listen, I've hiked a lot of high mountains before, and I'm prepared to do it again.
All right, well, that's a good note to end on. Garrett Mason, appreciate you being here with us and having this conversation about your candidacy. I'm sure we'll have many more conversations in the future. And if you are lucky enough to be the nominee, I'm sure the general election conversations will be all the more interesting. So
that's right. I will personally deliver my campaign sign for you to hang in the WGIN studio.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, that's an after the fact thing, right?
That's
after you've won. Those are the winners. That's the winner, hall of winners.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we appreciate you being here, of course. We'll continue these candidate interviews. We are not done. There's more to come. And yes, indeed, for all those who've asked, invitations to the Democrats as well are here because we want to have these types of conversations with anybody who might end up making decisions that affect your life. So, Garrett, appreciate it as always. That's it for the Pine Tree Pulse this week, and we'll see you again soon.